Minecraft 1.22 is adding the beautiful new pale oak wood type with huge potential for builds, but this new tree is difficult to farm and fiercely defended, so here's how to easily find and farm it. This is the new pale oak tree. Comparing it to a dark oak tree, their shape and generation is incredibly similar, a core 2x2 log with a few logs coming off of it. As you can see over here, that's more or less the same, but one difference is the pale oak trees tend to be a bit bent to the side and have a more irregular shape. The new pale oak wood that we're about to farm has some beautiful variants, and let's take a look through it. This is the pale oak log. I love the round texture of the log top there, and as well as the bark side, a lot of opportunities with this, along with the all bark block and these stripped blocks, looking a bit like quartz, amazing for kitchens, modern builds, all kinds of things. And you can see even the planks have a great texture. We also of course have stairs, slabs, fences, fence gates and trapdoors, but with the customized doors, it has these giant hinges. They look a bit like basalt or deep slate, as well as the trapdoor here. I like the fact that the trapdoor has no holes in it, so it's much more useful for siding and decorative purposes. And the hanging fence has a surprisingly dark texture, not looking quite as light as the others. There's also a boat and a chest boat of the pale wood type. It's certainly a beautiful new wood type, but how do we get the saplings for it and grow these trees? To get pale oak saplings, we need to start by finding the pale garden biome. Now this new biome is the only one that has the pale oak trees in it. How do we find this biome? Well, you can find it in high up areas of dark forest generation, or if you want, you can use chunk base. Now I do have a whole pale garden biome guide, and I'll have a link to that if you want to learn more about this biome and how to survive in it. So if you go to chunkbase.com, put in your world seed and go down to the map, you can find the pale garden biome by looking around or highlighting it. This biome is not the most common, but does generate at least in small portions around the world in new dark forests, and you can use this map to locate and go to them. Once we've found a dark forest, to go there you want to have a hoe, bed, and axe. Now the bed is in case it becomes nighttime, you want to sleep and not be in this biome during nighttime to avoid the creaking mob, which I do talk about more in other videos. Now you can collect the wood here if you want, but I would suggest farming it as this biome does have some dangers in it because of that. The main thing we need to do here is gather the saplings, and a fortune hoe can help with that. This will give us a higher sapling drop rate. You technically only have to collect 4 saplings, as that is enough to grow a pale oak tree. But I would suggest collecting at least 12 or 16, as it does take 4 saplings. At least 4 or 5 starter trees is probably a good idea. Now that we have some of these saplings, we don't really ever need to go back to this biome, not for any of the pale oak. So now let's learn how to use these newly acquired pale oak saplings. A pale oak tree, which is sort of being treated as an alternative variant of the dark oak tree, is grown just like it, requiring 4 saplings to grow. A single sapling will never grow anything here, but if we put 4 together, it'll grow naturally, or we can bone meal it into a pale oak tree. When collecting saplings from these leaves, it is thankfully the standard sapling drop rate. It's not like jungle trees where you get less, or like cherry trees where you get more. And it's the same with the drop rate of sticks. Looking at the actual pale oak sapling texture, you can see the trunk of the tree sort of forms a shape, bending this way and arcing back like a moon shape. So the texture is always oriented that way no matter where you are, which more or less makes it appear that that trunk changes position every time. Pale oak saplings are incredibly powerful. There's a chance that when bone mealing it, we won't just get the tree, but we'll also get pale moss generating in a circle around it. This is really useful as it gives us access to this item that I have talked more about in other videos. Now it's important to remember that if you're farming this just in a plain open area, you are going to get this pale moss spreading everywhere. It's somewhat similar to the podzol of the giant spruce tree, but this pale moss does not spread every time that you grow it. The pale moss carpets though certainly add ambience to the tree, with these 1 and 2 level high vines growing on the side of the tree, giving it a much spookier prettier look. The requirements for growing pale oak saplings are fairly standard, but there's one big difference. It's these hanging moss that generate on the sides. You see, the trees in Minecraft regard other logs and other leaves as blocks that you can generate right through. So two trees can, for an example, generate into each other like these are right here, and there's no problem. You'll notice though these saplings here are not growing, and that's because of the pale moss above them. Now we could break the pale moss just above them, but you can see the pale moss actually needs to be really nowhere near this tree, but now if we bone meal it, you can see it grows quite quickly. So we need to avoid these pale hanging moss because they are counted as a block that the tree cannot grow through and are stopped from growing through. So let's talk about two different ways of farming the pale oak saplings. One of them primarily around getting the saplings themselves, and one of them about getting hundreds and hundreds of the pale oak logs. To set up a simple tree farm of the pale oak saplings, here's what you want to do. Place down 4 oak saplings and surround it with path blocks like this. Then use another path block to divide it and make another dark oak planter over here. You can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks between each one of these 2x2 spaces, and that's the most important part. You can of course set up the rest of the blocks however you want, but the optimal way of growing these saplings is to have them all be 5 blocks apart from each other. You do not, for an example, want to grow the saplings something like this, or even placing them 2 blocks away, as not many of them will naturally grow in those conditions. Whereas if we place all of these pale oak trees at least 5 blocks away from each other, almost 100% of these trees will have enough space then to grow completely naturally. When we raise the random tick speed, you'll notice that all these trees grow, and there are these moss blocks that appear sometimes around them. Because of this, you probably want there to be blocks around here that cannot be turned into the moss blocks to avoid that spreading around your farm. So for a large scale tree farm, planting a lot of them, you want them to be farther apart. It's also a benefit of planting these 5 blocks apart that a very large amount of the leaves are preserved. That's because they don't really intersect each other. So what this means is if we want to harvest a lot of pale oak saplings, the best idea is to grow the trees in this position and then break all the leaves. But if you're just farming these normally and chopping down these trees, all these leaves will despawn and they'll give you a lot of these pale oak saplings as well. So that's the standard way of farming these, but what is the most efficient, quickest way to get as much pale oak as possible? To use this most efficient method, you want to start by farming a lot of the pale oak saplings, potentially from the other farm design. You also want to have a really good amount of bone meal. Now start by placing a strip of the pale oak saplings 2 blocks wide in a line like this. Then we can start on one end, bone mealing one of them, and going on to the next one. Keep doing this until when you're bone mealing it, you have a problem growing it, like this one. We can look above and quickly break those hanging roots, as that's the only block that would be stopping the growth, as you can see. Again, we see hanging roots, we destroy them and bone meal it here. Now the problem is, if we weren't here to manually destroy these hanging roots, we actually couldn't continue to plant these in a large line, as you can see. We need to go through here and break these until the bone meal works. So ideally, you want to break those first to not waste bone meal. Let's get a few more of these pale oak to grow. Now that we have one line of them, you want to go along this side and just break all of these root blocks that are on the side. And as you can see, there's not very many of them, so this is a lot easier than going the one way. Once we've done this, you want to place down more of the pale oak saplings in a line and start going through those as well. It's great though because these tend to be much easier as there's far fewer of the hanging roots. So we bone meal this tree for instance, there's only 1 or 2 hanging roots to get rid of, and we can go through growing these side trees far quicker as only a few of their leaves actually appear, because there's a wall of other trees on the other side. Moss carpets can also sometimes stop the growth. So I would suggest stacking a few more strips of these pale oak logs up to get ourselves a really large dense core of wood that we can grow off of. Again, these trees are often much easier to grow the more layers we have. As you can see, we're really quickly making a lot of logs, so you can continue this until you get as large of a block of pale oak as you want, and just mine through it. A beacon can help set up with this, and as you saw earlier, once we have a few trees up, it's easier to get rid of those leaves and roots on the sides, and so because of this, when you're mining through this, I would suggest leaving the very last layer of the pale oak logs still there, and plant your new saplings on the side of them. That way you don't have to break as many of those hanging roots, and it speeds up that process quite a bit. But anyway, by using this method of growing the pale oak, you're going to get yourself hundreds and hundreds of pale oak, and all it does is takes a few saplings and bone meal. So that's how to get as much of this pale wood as you like. However, there are two other items that are with the pale oak tree you might want to know about. The first one is the spooky creaking heart. Let's find out how to get this item. This is the creaking heart. When there's a pale oak log above and beneath it, it powers on and will spawn in the dangerous creaking at night. However, how do you find the creaking heart? So unfortunately, any pale oak tree that you grow in your farms, or just from saplings anywhere, will never have the creaking heart inside of it. The reason why is that Mojang wants to make these rare. However, if you do want to collect creaking hearts, although it can't be from your tree farm, here's how to get some of those. To get the creaking hearts, we have to be protected with some good armor and have a silk touch tool, preferably an axe. There are two ways to find the creaking heart inside of the pale garden biome. The first one is to dig up random trees you find there and see if you can find the creaking heart block inside. But the second one, which is much more effective, is to head to this biome at night. Now it is currently night inside of this pale garden biome, although I do have night vision on. So if we run through here, what's eventually going to happen is a creaking will appear somewhere. In fact, here's one that appeared. With no night vision, it's much easier to see the particles traveling from and to this creaking. Now once we see the direction that those particles are coming from, we want to go to that tree and then turn around since we want to face the creaking. We'll find the creaking heart there, which you noticed was orange. But wait, there's another creaking here leading to another creaking heart. We can follow that as well, finding a creaking heart up at the top of this tree. This creaking right here is attached to the creaking heart I put right here in the tree, but you'll never find a visual one like that. In fact, they only appear in places that are fully covered by oak logs. So you can't see them in a tree without breaking them. This one travels over here, and when we go up here to break it, you can see it's in the very core of that tree. And so because of that, of course, we couldn't see it. And again, be aware of all the other hostile mobs. So that's how you get your own creaking hearts in Minecraft, if you want to have there be some of these creaking mobs around your base. One of the biggest features of the pale oak trees is their white leaves. If you grab these leaves and move them to other biomes, they will stay gray, which gives you a lot of great building opportunities with gray leaves. But the leaves inside of this biome also change color. However, unlike these gray leaves that don't change color, normal leaves, if put inside of the pale garden, will turn into much darker gray colors, as leaves in this biome are made to go to this color scale, since that's the plant color scheme inside this biome. But you may notice the birch and the spruce here are different colors, unlike all these other wood variants. So an interesting Easter egg is that for some reason spruce tree leaves and birch tree leaves are able to survive inside of the pale garden. And that even gets into using pale oak. Unlike, let's say, crimson and warped wood, the pale wood does burn, and so because of that, you want to make sure that in your builds, these blocks and also their leaves are in fireproof areas, as although they do look like a somewhat unnatural type of wood, they are definitely able to burn. Building with the pale oak wood is a ton of fun, and an awesome use for it, for an example, is making white picket fences. This is one of Mojang's considerations when adding this wood type, and overall a white wood has been asked for a long time, as it'll be awesome inside of modern builds, but even placing it right next to this birchwood, you can see things like birchwood and these pale planks go really well together. There's going to be a lot of awesome building opportunities with these wood types. You can even see the birch and the pale wood here share different tones. So this block is really compatible with tons of others, like deep slate or basalt, so be sure to use it all around your world. Anyway, that is how to get the pale oak blocks inside of Minecraft. Minecraft, so be sure to use this amazing wood type in your world. So anyway, that's how you get pale oak logs inside of Minecraft. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it. Subscribe to see more content like this, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.